Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us for our 28th episode of YCP's virtual monthly series called Refiner's Fire. Every month, Catholic business leaders from diverse industries share professional and spiritual wisdom in short 30-minute segments. In spite of the short length of these segments, though, we really do hope the tips and insights will be powerful for all of us as we strive to work in witness for Christ, which many of you know is our tagline here at YCP. The name of this interview series, Refiner's Fire, comes from scripture from the book of Malachi, where we learn that God is like a refiner's fire who seeks to purify us and make us the best that we can be. That's the whole point of this series. Through the inspiration and wisdom of these exceptional Catholic leaders, we're challenged to improve in small ways in our professional and spiritual lives. So let's be open to this journey of refinement so that in all that we do, we can do it aiming for a higher standard of excellence that gives glory to God. So our topic today, practicing prudence, temperance, fortitude, and justice in the workplace at home. I'm really excited to have today joining me Mark Murray. Mark will be talking to us about these cardinal virtues and how we can apply them in practical ways to our business life, to our workplaces, and our jobs. Mark has held roles in government, higher ed, and other businesses. He's worked for the state of Michigan, Grand Valley University, and also the president of Meijer. So please join me now, welcoming Mark. Mark, glad to have you here.
Peter, glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about this topic, why it's important to you, these cardinal virtues, why it's important to us as Catholics, and especially why they're critical for young Catholic workers today.
Well, I appreciate the chance to visit on this. These really are the attributes of a good character. So they're important for Catholic professionals. They're important for all professionals. And the great news of this is that people see them, they know it. We're looking for people. We want to have coworkers who have character. We want to have neighbors. We want to have our family members have that kind of character. We know this, but sometimes we need to get a little vocabulary around it and get some understanding. And the good news with this is that these four cardinal virtues, not only do they resonate in the public square and in sort of common sense in every organization, but they're deeply rooted in Catholic teaching. They're in the Catechism of the Catholic Church in the 1800s sections. And so people can take a look at those and get a little more detail. They're in Scripture. The Book of Wisdom names these four and says nothing in life is more useful than these. So these are useful. They're good for building character. They're habits. That's what virtues are. And so it's an important topic and a good way to help ground. I think a lot of people look for an easy framework, the 7 habits of this or the 12 guidances of that or whatever. Well, this is what both the church and deep thinkers over time have taught.
Yeah, and I was looking up, this word cardinal, and it comes from the Latin word for hinge, so that all other virtues come from the development and building the habits of these four cardinal virtues. So they're certainly very, very important and worthy of time of reflection and also building those habits in our lives. So we're going to get into that a little bit more here together. Firstly, though, could you help us to define each of these four virtues, the 30-second definition in layman's terms, so we can really understand the basics of these four important virtues?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So justice, which is probably the one that is the word that gets most used, is giving people their due, giving anyone their due. What are they due? How do we react to that? Your boss is to be respected as your boss. Give him your due. When you worship God, you're giving God his due. When you ask children to follow and obey their parents, you're giving them their due. These are all acts of justice. Prudence, probably the most important one, because it's the guidance, it's the engine, and that is really rooted in reason and in reality. Maybe the easiest way to describe prudence is Your feet are both firmly planted on the ground. You're dealing with reality. You're not living dreamland. You're not hoping for things that aren't. You're dealing with what actually is, and you're bringing reason and good judgment to that. Temperance, which to some degree may be the most needed these days, is to keep your emotions and your behaviors in check. Moderation is another term for it. The night out at the bar, the time at the dinner party with too much food, the Twitter and the social media feeds. There's a lot of places where we will serve ourselves and others by bringing some temperance, some control, some moderation. And fortitude, courage, probably another good word for that. We need to know prudentially, within reason, thinking about it, when to step in. When is it time to go ahead and do something that may make us uncomfortable, but we know is the right thing for the organization, for the family, for the neighborhood, for whatever domain we're acting in. These are good habits to build, and these are the 4 cardinal virtues.
Excellent. That's very helpful as we continue on with our conversation here. Just a reminder to our listeners, we will take your questions in just a few short minutes. So you can be adding your questions in the comments section on whichever platform you're listening to us, and we'll get to some of those questions shortly. So let's push forward here, Mark. Let's bring this down a little more practically. What are some everyday typical workplace interactions or moments that we might experience that would give us an opportunity to practice these virtues? Because I'm certain that there are many of them, and that aligns so well with the mission of Young Catholic Professionals.
Well, yeah, let's take it in the positive sense, which is you're at a work setting, and the topic may be a hiring decision, the topic may be capital deployment for a new product line or acquisition or whatever the topic is. Let's start with prudence. Again, that's the main guiding force. Being prepared, having your facts, knowing what it is that you're presenting or what someone else is presenting and how you critique it. There's nothing better in a work setting than being prepared and really knowing the domain and thinking and reasoning and working in facts, not in the passion of the moment. I don't know of a setting, in a work setting, where that isn't a kind of a daily topic. And this is the sort of key point here, is these are habits. And so you get there gradually. There's no DNA which says this person's prudent and this one isn't. Some people you just build this up as part of your practice. So that's a pretty simple example. I think temperance is the other one. There's an awful lot of data feeds we're all dealing with, all the social media, all the news channels, all the everything, all the time. And knowing how to step back, turn that off, listen more carefully, not simply be reactive. We all know that the business model is to keep us on edge. That's what keeps us bringing us back to all these feeds. That's how they monetize this. And we will build a habit if we can begin to disengage and put those in context. Those are a couple of examples. And Peter, I think I've lost you here for a second.
Yeah, I think we're back now, Mark.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a really good example of prudence and temperance, and I'm sure that many have experienced. All of us have experienced that to develop in virtue, there really needs to be some amount of reflection on what we're experiencing and preparation also for what we're going to experience. And so I can imagine it would only benefit all of us to think a little bit more, perhaps at the beginning of the day, what am I going or expect to encounter today that'll be opportunities to develop these virtues. And then with that awareness, then I can step into that meeting with someone who maybe I've had difficulties with in the past, or that presentation where I'm going to need to really muster up the courage to step outside of my comfort zone in my pitch to the CEO. Whatever it is that I'm going to be encountering throughout my day, I will have opportunities to practice all four of these virtues. Let's continue on this track a little bit more. Mark, you want to add something here?
Well, I was just going to say, these are your character. These are your habits. Virtue is good, so these are the good habits, the good character. But I can remember situations in my professional life where I can see that an organization is about to do something that isn't going to work for the organization or isn't the right thing to do. And that's a beautiful situation to bring the courage to say something and to step in, but probably more important, the prudence to figure out the right way to say it at the right time, in the right setting, to the right people. There's no good that comes from simply blurting out a general disagreement with things. If you see something and you really believe it, it is important to sort of tactically figure out how to engage it and bring that forward. But don't punt on it. If this is an important topic, it's important for the organization or for your family, whatever. Same thing with, trying to help a child through a challenging situation. Take some time, think about what you're about to do, and do it well, do it thoughtfully, prepare for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even just in a straight professional development sense, you're kind of talking about bringing solutions, right? Thinking through when I'm going to present this problem, opportunity, whatever it is, what kind of solutions can I also bring? It may not be the right answer, but it's at least an indication that I've thought through this a little bit before bringing this up with the right person, the right place, the right time, with the right message.
Yeah, it was something I always felt strongly about for myself, but also for people that work for me, was I welcome the opportunity to discuss a problem. I would love to hear, or like in my case, I'll present an option that I believe is a workable solution.
Yeah, that's great language to be able to use. Many people often have the desire to get to the next level professionally, but they may feel that they're caught in a rut. The tyranny of the now, the busyness is taking over, and it's tough to break away from that. So how can growth in these virtues really help us progress away from that busyness and give us a breakthrough opportunity in our own professional and spiritual growth too?
Well, these are decisions of the will, actually. I mean, we make the decision about where we're going to be putting in our time. People are going to come off this podcast, this video engagement, and there's still a good amount of time ahead. Where's that time going? These are pretty. There's no sort of simple gimmick here. This is fundamentally your character, fundamentally your choices. And how do you do it? How do you disengage? Again, I'd say it's a temperance thing, and I'd say the first place to start is all the input feeds. I think many of us are victims of getting too much input too fast, not a chance to discern the difference between good and bad input. We are getting pushed to react and to be agitated about things. And I can guarantee you'll be better in your family and better in the workplace if you're that person that people can trust, is not going to fly off the handle, is going to really think about, try and bring solutions, have the guts to stand up when it's time to go ahead and try something new product line, new whatever. These are acts of courage, and then really bringing true discipline to your thinking, reason, feet on the ground, reality. And again, these are all things one can say in any setting, but if we're going to be committed to forming ourselves as Christians, these are the virtues that the Catholic Church teaches. And now they also teach the theological virtues that come from grace: faith, hope, and charity. These are the ones that are habits. These are ones that also benefit from grace. but they come because we make the decision and we build these habits ourselves in conjunction with the grace of God.
Mark, I'm just thinking about St. Joseph, in particular under the title of St. Joseph the Worker, who is YCP's patron, and the great opportunity we have to reflect on his life and how he practiced these virtues. And while we don't have any words directly from him in Scripture, that opportunity we have to reflect on his life and how might Joseph have approached X situation that I am in today in my workplace or in my family, my friend groups. He's such an amazing model for us as workers, and these virtues are very much ones that he possessed, practiced, made into habits. And you can just imagine him practicing these in his business, right? In his woodworking, in his teaching of Jesus, and passing down the faith to him. So perhaps something that we could reflect more on. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Just
I think it's terrific.
And
the first thing comes to mind is we don't have a lot of words from him. Rule number one: listen a lot more than you're talking. That will serve all of us well. And the important thing, I'd really take justice here. We haven't talked much about justice. He understood his role. He received insight and direction from God and from angels, and then carried on and did accordingly. And that's, again, the spiritual aspect of justice, giving God his due. But this question of giving everyone their due, giving your boss your due. I mean, you want your children to be just children. Help them understand that obeying parents is a legitimate, important thing. Again, presuming parents are speaking honestly and being good parents. But these roles and authority, we're in an environment where most authority is questioned and really not accepted very well. And that's, again, an area where we can witness that these are legitimate. The boss really is the boss, as long as the boss is acting in properly in a moral sense. It's good sometimes to take some courage, and we've seen that in some of the recent sexual harassment kind of challenges. People do have the courage to stand up and say something's wrong here. That's a beautiful thing, but hopefully they've thought it through and have all their facts ready too.
Yeah, there's a lot of discipline that this requires in the cultivation of these virtues, right? Because we have to use the virtues to develop that habit of being disciplined, but also I think it's a chance to reflect on how we build this discipline of virtue into our lives. And it's so important, right? I mean, the church is really giving us the foundation here for living a life of fullness and alignment with God's will to the best of our ability that we're able to achieve that here on earth.
No matter where you are in the organization, but it's even more true if you're higher up in an organization. People are watching you a lot more than they're listening to you. And that's where character really shines through. Is this a person I can trust? Is this a person I'm going to take a risk to follow? And again, that can be coworker, but it's often it's subordinate to boss kind of questions. And so if you are responsible for people, spend more time thinking about what you're doing and what you're showing and what you're witnessing than what you're saying.
Exactly. Just a reminder for our audience here, we're about to turn to some questions from you. So keep those questions coming in here as we continue our conversation about the cardinal virtues. Mark, you've achieved a great deal of professional success in your career, and you're stepping into the next stage here in your life. What advice would you give to young workers today? Obviously the professional environment has changed somewhat since you first entered it, but you have a lot of experience. And what would your recommendation or challenge be to young workers today in their 20s and 30s getting started in their careers?
Yeah, I'd offer two. One is a basic lesson of deferred gratification. I think sometimes we want what we want it now. And when you're going to school and you're working hard and getting a degree, when you're relatively new in an organization, you're trying to understand exactly how this organization will grow and flourish. Be patient. This sometimes just takes a little bit of time. The deferred gratification team wins. The immediate gratification team looks like they're winning. They're the ones who are having a lot more, seem to be having a lot more fun.
I love that.
Take some time and just accept that there's going to be a certain pace to getting up to speed and being able to really bring value. And that's probably the second one is work at all times on bringing value. The simple vision of it is pound the nail, pound the nail perfectly. Do your job as well as you possibly can. Looking back now, I've worked in government and in business and education. These are different sectors, but in every case, I was invited to go into a different sector because people had seen the work I was doing in the sector I was in, and they saw that it was good work. They saw that it was, bringing value and showing leadership. And so I was asked to step across into new domains. And looking back on it, I would now say primarily because I was pounding the nail pretty darn well in the thing I was doing at the time.
Yeah, I love that, Mark, because it's excellence in whatever you are doing today, right? Pounding a nail, it takes pounding one nail well, one nail excellently, one nail after the other to build a house, right? And so maybe just reflecting on what is that nail in my work, regardless of what industry I may be in, what my responsibilities are, what is my nail, and how can I do that exceptionally well and really excel in how I approach that. I think that's a great challenge for all of us.
Whether you're in social work or teaching or accounting, data processing, any field you're in, there is a body of work. Do it as flawlessly as you're capable of doing it.
Excellent. Well, we're going to turn to our audience here and take a couple of questions. So we'll get our first question here from John Michael. Practicing justice, examples of tithing, volunteering generously, being quick to apologize or forgive others, and temperance, like fasting, practicing self-control, seem clear. But how do we grow in prudence and fortitude?
Let me take fortitude first, and let's use the word courage as a match for it. Isn't exactly the same thing, but that may be a little bit more understandable. There are many times it's terrifying to some degree to step in when you see somebody engaged in behaviors that are harmful to themselves or others in the workplace or the family. That's fair. It's very uncomfortable. You will not go from 0 to 100 miles an hour on that one. But find a situation, you're feeling a little uncomfortable. That's when the light goes off. I need to step into this. I'm not going to just step back and hope somebody else takes care of it. I'm going to step in. If you're prepared, if you do that well, you will build the habit, being more comfortable, stepping into things that warrant you stepping in and having the courage to make the intervention or the decision for yourself, whatever it takes. So that's one that's, some sides say baby steps. Find the situation you're uncomfortable in and step into it. On the question of prudence, being rooted in fact and in reason is really a discipline question. And you will find in almost any setting that there's more preparation, there's more judgment, there's more balance that can actually be brought to whatever you're facing than what you've been thinking about. I'll take it to a family side rather than necessarily a work side. Troubled teen. You've got you're going to have to do something here and be helpful. You need to do it in love. You are the parent, and so justice demands you do it. Do it with moderation. Don't be pounding tables and screaming and throwing chairs. Temperance. But prudence, learn something. Go understand the pressures that the young man or young woman are under right now. Don't simply come in without having done, quote unquote, your homework. What's this child facing? What's the circumstance at school? Who are friends? That's all prudence. That's all reason. That's all bringing the fact set together so that the intervention is more useful and important.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mark. And our prayer life can also really be integrated deeply into these moments of discernment and opportunities to practice virtue, because we can stop, going back to your first point about courage and fortitude, and offer a prayer and say, God, lead me in this moment. I'm stepping out a little bit into the unknown here. Jesus, be with me. St. Joseph, our Blessed Mother, be with me, right? So those small moments of prayer that we can incorporate that will help guide us to be prudent, to be temperate, right? To really practice these virtues more fully.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take another question here. From Levi, I find it relatively easy to practice temperance and prudence at home, but harder while traveling. I find myself working to burn out during travel. Have you experienced this? Any tips? Thanks, Levi.
Yeah, I certainly have experienced work burnout, and I think it's an unfortunate reality that many people have faced. And I won't profess to be somebody that has always did master that topic. Again, I take get some signals, watch for it. At the point that you're feeling so stressed and you're unproductive, you're falling asleep over what you're supposed to be reading or responding to, or your response email was garbled up because it just, you didn't take the time to think about it. It really is time to just stop, get up, either, go to bed or go take a walk or whatever the right thing at that moment is. And these are issues of will and discipline. There's nothing you're doing that's going to turn out to be that important if you're not doing it well. And if you're burning out, you're not doing it well.
Yeah, and another aspect of that burnout, one that I've learned in my own professional life, is to assess whether a high level of hard work is necessary for the long term, or is it more of a shorter term or a nearer term sprint mentality. I found that helps provide a little bit more of a framework where you can say, yes, I'm working a lot, but I'm working towards this end on this date, right? I recognize that doesn't work with every industry and every role. But if you're working hard towards a certain timeline or towards the completion of a certain project or work that you're doing, it can help kind of shape how much energy you're investing in that versus this sort of unending sense of hard work that really has an unclear end. So for some, perhaps that could be helpful. I know it is for me.
Well, you're raising the I'm in the moment and I've got a huge assignment there. I'm going to have to go through the weekend here working. You've also got the general work-life balance question. And it turns out there are times when you need to pull out and just say, I can't keep doing this. I mean, I can do it, but I'm not balancing all the things I really need to carry out my responsibilities in life. And so there are situations where you don't take a promotion or you ask to step a little bit aside, or in some cases you have to leave that particular employer or that particular professional setting. And those are take time, spend time in prayer, understand who you are, really talk it through with trusted people. But that's the bigger or the longer term question of work-life balance. But in the moment, many times I have been, and I know many of the people watching this have been called in to do some extra work for a while, and it wears you out. But if it's manageable and stays in limited bursts, that's just part of the current reality.
Yeah, exactly right. Mark, we're going to take one more question. We'll give you a 30-second answer here, and then we'll have to wrap up our session together. So we'll get our final question here from Peter. When you were first getting started in your career, what was the highest leverage decision you made to grow professionally?
Work for good bosses. Work for good bosses. Look for people you can admire and model yourself after them.
That's excellent.
10 seconds.
Excellent advice. I love it. Mark, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today about these important virtues and get your expertise and insights. Thank you so much for joining us today for Refiner's Fire.
I was glad to be with you, and God bless you in your work.
Thank you, Mark.